Now that the transfer portal has, basically ended and for this window, wanted to take a look at what I think the four teams that came out as very clear winners. Now they're not necessarily ranked 1 through 4, however, they are all in the top 10. But these are the four teams that I thought did the best job in addressing what their needs were coming out of the transfer portal. Texas, Ole Miss, Ohio State, and Oregon. I'm going to start with the number one team who I thought which is Ole Miss. Now they brought in 17 transfers, which is like kind of on the higher end. None of the other teams on this list brought in as many as Ole Miss. And really, what their biggest philosophy was addressing the offensive line and the defense. And they did that. That was some of their weaknesses last year, and now they're bringing in the starting left guard and the starting right guard from Washington with Nate Kalepo and Julius Buelow, who were part of the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line at Washington. Now, you can probably say that the guards on that line were probably the quote unquote weak spot. The tackles were much better, but I mean that's still really great depth that you're adding there, and they'll probably start right away. And then they brought in the number 2 edge and Princely from Florida, and then also Walter Nolan, the number 1 D tackle, who was formerly the number 1 recruit in the country back in 2021 and for A&M. Also brought in receiver Juice Wells. He's ranked actually the 4th ranked receiver in the transfer portal. I honestly think you can make the case that he's the number 1. He crushed it at South Carolina. Great hands, really athletic. He'll be a really great get for Ole Miss as a threat there. And then obviously their biggest loss was Quinshon Judkins, but they brought in Logan Diggs, who was from LSU and then formerly from Notre Dame. So Ole Miss is looking at their schedule and they're saying this is relatively manageable in the SEC. They're stacking up talent and they're pushing all their chips in for this year. So interested to see how they net out. Lane Kiffin, Portal King, did it again. Number 2 team on here, Ohio State. Now they have 7 transfers, mostly because they have an insane depth and they don't need to bring in a ton of transfers. But they brought in some really high end quality talent. They brought in obviously the number 1 safety in Caleb Downs. They brought in that number 1 running back from Ole Miss, Quinshon Judkins. They flipped Julian Sayin from Bama at the last minute when Saban retired. Caleb Downs was also a part of that movement. And they brought in Will Howard for quarterback to compete for that job. Now, that position has been open. So they lost a decent amount of production last year, but they kept a lot of key guys. And now they're just adding a lot of the pieces where I think that they need it, or they're adding a lot of talent and depth, especially on the defensive side, where they're going to be deeper. So they're going to be hot coming out of the gate. They're going to be really fired up after Michigan's winning a natty, and they've lost 3 years in a row. So expect them to, come out really strong. All right, the number 3 team I have here is the Oregon Ducks. They had brought in 11 transfers, and their main focus was addressing that secondary. They're most mainly noted from like those Washington games where, they got cooked, as did most secondaries, with that receiving core that Washington had. But they brought in 3 corners and a safety to address the secondary, and they also brought in a replacement for Bo Nix. Take your pick. They got Dylan Gabriel and Dante Moore coming in. I would imagine Gabriel is going to be the front runner to get that job, although Moore could push the envelope there. And then also don't want to forget that they brought in Evan Stewart, a huge get for them at wide receiver, former 5-star, committed to A&M previously. They're going to enter in the Big Ten and be one of the top teams in the Big Ten to start the year in their first year in the Big Ten. They are loaded. They have a great program. They're going to be ready to win next year. And then lastly, let's talk about Texas. So Texas lost a lot of talent, especially their pass catchers. They lost A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, and J.T. Sanders. Their tight end. But you know what they did? They filled all of those holes. They brought in Isaiah Bond from Bama, Silas Bolden from Oregon State, Matthew Golden from Houston, and Amari Niblack from Alabama to fill that tight end position. Now, the talent that has left, these guys are going to have big shoes to fill. Those were some really key players and really big time players that Texas is losing. but they're doing their best job to fill that void. Also, Adam, they brought in Andrew Makuba, safety from Clemson from last year. So they're going to enter the SEC as a top tier team as well. So, Sark has done a great job in the portal. He's got a stacked team entering year one in the SEC. We'll see how they work out.